All right, so I am live and a little late. So, sorry, there's a chair there. You'll know why there's a chair there. I had my music director. He came over, and I'm gonna be releasing a video talking about sacred music. So we redid our video, and so that's what's gonna happen. Sorry, I'm a little behind, so I'm trying to catch up with a few things. Um, because I'm behind. So please forgive me for that. The first thing I want to say is tonight, besides what I just said, I guess, is tonight we're going to be having a special late night with levity, and we're going to be having all of our wives communicating with each other and talking to each other for the first time. And so they're all Catholic wives. And so mostly it's been us boys talking, and now our wives are going to get in on it and have conversations about, like, quite literally anything. Hopefully, anything but Mandy's conversion story, which we will be doing that later. So that is planned to do. She's going to walk through her conversion from a pagan to Catholic. Yeah, so that'll be interesting to see. Let me just get a few more things. Again, I apologize for being a little late. I do this in between my job, lunch for my job, and so yeah. So all right. So first, we're going to be talking about the real rumors. I got to stop saying first, but all right. So here we are. The real rumors of the TLM ban and what to do if true. So there are rumors going around that there's a TLM ban, and they seem to be legitimate. And so I myself did not find them. What I did is I heard this is the first place I heard about it, and then it cropped up everywhere. So Return to Tradition, he's never been on the channel, but he has helped promote some of the videos on the channel, and so he has helped with promoting Modern Papist, and I appreciate him doing that. But like, these are the videos. So these two videos here, actually no, these three videos here are where you can find a very in-depth analysis of this TLM math or TLM ban. I'm not going to go through all of that stuff because I'm directing you to where you can find it. Okay, so like, I don't want to like rehash what he did. I'm not going to copy and paste what he is literally already done. I'm not going to do that. But he has really good sources. I've been watching him for several years, and so when the motu proprio came, I knew about it coming several months before it happened because I was watching his channel. He has really good citations for where he gets his information, and or people who give him information that are kept on the DL, obviously, because you don't want them to, like, it's like a journalist, right? Like, you don't want to give away where you're getting information, especially if it's a good bit of information. And so Dr. Anthony Stein does a very good job at showing this. Big qualifier here, I don't agree with everything he says, but that should go without saying. I'm promoting him because in good faith, I think he does a lot. Like, I think he does a lot of his material in good faith, and if not all of it. And these videos are really well cited, and so he's not just making stuff up. So from the rumors, it seems that July 16th is the date. And so with July 16th being the date, that means you basically have a month to prepare for that, if that's the case. So like, this is like a really weird video. I've never quite done this video before, but like 3 weeks ago, I did this video and I responded to this. So like what is it? I talk about it, but like 3 weeks ago in a very extreme example, I forget where okay, so I think I say it here, but like basically in this video, 3 weeks ago, I gave an example of what would happen if the TLM was banned. And when I said that as an extreme case. I did not mean that as a like, well, this is actually happening now. and but like what I said was like my reasoning behind what I said is true. Like that's how I feel about it in the sense of like if you are raising kids, like you have to make a strategy and you have to commit to that strategy to how you're going to raise your kids in the TLM or the Novus Ordo, or in the Eastern rites. So, all right, 1 second. There's a lot going on in chat. So, thank you, Jacob. All right. So yeah, there's good. I don't necessarily want to put them up because I don't want to say I agree or disagree with any of those statements, but what it is it's good conversation. It is a lot of good points. I don't want to detract too much because I don't have much time to do this. I only have until 1 in my time. So the reasonable response for a lot of people will be, okay, if the TLM is banned on it, the rumor goes on the diocesan level, what do you do practically? What is the practical response to that? Okay. For most people, they won't have access to the TLM. And so it makes sense that if you don't have access to the TLM, to go to the Novus Ordo. Okay. Or else there's like a huge problem with, following the precept of the church of going to mass on Sundays. So you go to the Novus Ordo. You may not like it. But you may not like it, but there's again, most people do not have access to the TLM in a way that is reasonable. And I say reasonable because some people will go 5 hours one way to a TLM. So there are some people who will do that. Okay. They'll go to an FSSP or a Christ the King church or parish, and they will do that. And that's completely respectable. That is your choice. That's your prerogative. There's nothing bad about that. Not everyone is going to be able to do that, though. And there's a lot of reasons why. And so it's a matter of making the best of the situation. And so if this is true, if there's going to be a ban on the TLM on the diocesan level, then, and you currently go to a TLM on the diocesan level and there's no TLM close to you that won't be, there's no TLM close to you that won't be with, that won't be, this is a weird thing to say, but that won't be suspicious. I think that's probably the best way of saying it. But like where you're certain everything is okay. Yeah, I'm going to go with that. Where you're certain to, everything is okay. Then you got to find what I strongly suggest to do is to find a good priest and go to the masses that priest will do and support him when he wants to make the Novus Ordo more reverent. And, especially for those TLM parishes that they'll no longer be TLM, like what's going to happen to them in this case? What's probably going to happen to them is that they're just going to flip to be Novus Ordo, right? Like it doesn't make sense to have a thriving parish, even if it's TLM, to then all of a sudden just get snipped and cut. Like that makes no sense. What what would probably happen is that the TLM would become a very reverent Novus Ordo. And like that's not ideal, but it's not like a lose-lose situation. Like you still have you will still retain the priest, you will still retain, a number of things within the parish. The parish will still be together. So again, this depends on the bishop, because obviously this is all rumor, but it would make sense that those TLM parishes would not just collapse, go away, and everyone gets scattered. That's a waste of resources on the bishop's level. And so the bishop would still want to utilize that parish. And so that parish would then be, used by that priest and by that congregation. So you don't necessarily have to go out and find a good priest that is going to make the Novus Ordo more reverent. Okay. So that's something you actually might not have to do, but you may, and that's depending on the bishop. And so this is something I wanted to bring up, because this is something that I think too many people, as stated in the comments, some people go really, really hard to the TLM, and they only promote the TLM, not recognizing or not appreciating the fact that most people who go to the Novus Ordo do not have access to a TLM. And so you have to be practical about this. You can't just say, okay, well, I'm going to just ban the TLM only drum. That's not reasonable. And it's quite for those that are stuck with just going to the Novus Ordo, it creates you're going to create resentment. And that's not the goal. Because ultimately, what I think would hopefully will happen. I talked to a few friends yesterday about this. Hopefully what will happen is over the course of the next few decades, okay, this is the long game. This has to be the long game. This isn't, it's not going to be something that's going to go overnight. Oh man, everybody's going to do the TLM. Every priest knows Latin. Every priest knows how to do the TLM. Over the long game, if you want the TLM to exist in a way that is spread, you need to prime the Novus Ordo parishes. Except you do it in a way that is not jarring. And so what we currently, well, not we, because most of us are older. I'm sorry, most of us are younger. But in the 1960s, when the NO was flipped, right? When it was oh, we're doing an NO now, we have to do the NO. That was very jarring. And when I talk about the priest crisis and how it negatively affected the priest crisis, that's one of those implementations I talk about, is because if you only experience the TLM and then all of a sudden you only experience the NO, you start questioning a lot of things, because now how you're practicing is so substantially different than what you previously did. And that it causes you to question your faith. It's not merely an aesthetic thing. Okay. Devotions are not merely an aesthetic thing. And so, and so in a similar way, we don't want to do that with those that go to the Novus Ordo, where we jar them out of being Catholic and going to Protestant. We don't want that to happen, but we do want them to transition into a more reverent parish towards God, or more reverent form of the Mass, if what they do right now is kind of a weird hunky-dory version. And in fact, in the sacred music conversation, we actually talk about that we actually talk about high and low Novus Ordo Masses, which literally blew my mind, because I didn't know such a thing existed. I thought it was just Novus Ordo and that was it. But no, there's actually a high and low Mass. And so we need to, it just doesn't seem to be actualized like it should be. And so that's all that to say, if we're going to transition into like something that is beyond the Novus Ordo and you know, maybe even beyond the TLM. So like, and I say beyond the TLM because again, the faith grows, right? The TLM as it existed in 1962 did not exist in the exact same way in the 1500s. Okay. There was organic growth to that. And so if there is good organic growth to the TLM, we may see something beyond the TLM in a good way. Not something that has replaced it like the Novus Ordo did, because that's what happened. I think Mass of the Ages does a very good job of showing that to be the case. Now, I don't agree with all of their, well, I agree with a lot of what they say because they provide the receipts for everything they say, but it's also recognizing like, how do we move forward given all of this information and given we have so much like transition to do. And so my whole, like a lot of my videos have been to pushing a more reverent Novus Ordo, because once you do that, once you have people have a respect for the Novus Ordo and a reverence with what they currently have access to, when you start introducing, hey, let's go to the TLM, or hey, let's go to like a Anglican ordinate version of the TLM, people are going to be more open to it, because you're not just moving from their like mixed mass with all of their like abuses and things that they don't even know about, and the priest may not know about, into like something that is incredibly foreign to them. Like that doesn't make any sense. But we know that people can be transitioned into it over a period of time. And my parish is an example of that, where over 5 years, we went from like the typical Novus Ordo to an incredibly reverent Novus Ordo. And we were able to even like get around the like altar rails situation. And so we have altar rails now. And so so that's what I'm pushing. I'm going to check the chat again, because the chat is still going. Let's see. In the document. Okay, so Mark, that would be a great question for someone who has more experience than me in that, because like I'm not a theologian, and so I'm very reserved when it comes to talking about certain theological points that I myself am not, like, I don't experience. Like, I have no problem talking about Humanae Vitae, right? I'm very well versed in Humanae Vitae, and I will witness to what I've lived as a practicing Catholic to Humanae Vitae. But there are some documents that, because of the nuance and because I haven't like studied it myself, I stay away from, unless there's another, like there's someone that I'm with that's a theologian. So just to clarify, like if I were to have a discussion, I'd invite a theologian on and we'd talk about that. So, but I have this saved, so I have your question saved. So the answer is maybe. I just don't know exactly. If you could, in another comment in the chat, like give some nuances to that, that'd be great. And I'll pull that out and try to see if someone can answer that. Yeah. So, and there are different. So he says, my brother belongs to so Jacob says, my brother belongs to an FSP parish, an hour and a half away, but he goes to an NO parish nearby for daily mass and confession. Many people at that parish want the Latin mass, but won't travel far. Right. And there's various reasons why people won't travel far. So there are limitations that in people's lives that make it so that that's not a practical thing. Like, I live in Metro Detroit, and there are certain, like, we have the advantage of being able to go to a TLM usually within a half hour to an hour. I know there's some people who go to St. Joseph's Shrine, which is a Christ the King sovereign priest parish. People will travel an hour and a half to that because that's the only TLM available to them. And Metro Detroit, the way it looks, it kind of sprawls like in kind of like a quarter of a circle. And so it creates depending on where you are, like the drive could be an hour and a half to 2 hours, and you're still in Metro Detroit and you're going to that TLM and it happens to be the closest TLM. And so that's, like a lot of my comments aren't simply like I'm pulling it out of my butt or something. Like they're because people, like I've talked to people who live in my area who have discussed a lot of this stuff, and exactly what Jacob said. They'd love to go to a Latin mass, but it's not close to them. And so they have to deal with something that they would prefer they didn't go to, but is currently there. Let's see. Hello. Hello, Zoomer. So Mark, I think that's a very good point, but from my experience, and this is like from my experience, I don't think there's ever been a survey done to find this out explicitly. But my concern is that many, what you're saying, my concern is that many of the TLM goers don't consider NO to be illicit, perhaps valid, but so scandalous with respect to the Eucharist that they will leave for the Orthodox. So there is definitely a pipeline. So the first thing I'll say is there's definitely a pipeline into sedevacantism and Orthodox. And Father Eric and I talk about that. Like we did a video about the trads leaving. Okay. But like, I would say that from my experience, and so anecdotally, I can only attest to this, and given like the different parishes I've been to, I don't actually think it's the case. I think what it is it's a matter of preference. I think they do prefer the TLM because it's more enriching to them. I mean, objectively, it has more prayers and everything. So like it has a lot more devotion in it, right? Like, so objectively speaking. But for them, they're going because they want the form of the mass is conducive to their worship style. And it's a very good thing. So like being able to recognize that is a very good thing. And they're, it is preferred they go to the TLM and not the NO. And so that is my experience. I don't think it's a matter of they think it's wrong outright. It's just something that they prefer not to go to. It's like the option of like, I like on a similar scale, it's kind of like, you have two goods. One you consider to be a better good than the other. And it's not a like, if you choose this one's bad. Like I chose marriage as my vocation. Like I followed the discernment of marriage for my vocation. That doesn't mean that priesthood's bad. And I think we need to frame the discussion more in that light, that there is you have two goods available. That doesn't mean when you choose one good that you think the other one's bad. I think that is a secular mindset that has crept in from politics, but that is not, again, from my experience, I would not say that most TLM goers think that the NO is bad. Just something they prefer not to go to. Let's see. Thanks. Yep, I saw it, Mark. Thank you. No problem. Okay, so now you're just asking the questions. Great. So sorry, I'm just right. So unfortunately, I have a Latin mass 15 minutes away, but I used to belong to that FSP parish and drove over an hour. I couldn't do that anymore. Right. So that's, let's see. Okay. So I think that's it. Like I said, if you can view specifically these 3 videos about it, that is where this rumor, like he cites pretty reliable sources that have in the past been very accurate. So Dr. Anthony Stein at Return to Tradition. So again, this is where I knew months ahead of time that the motu proprio was coming, because he had reported on it and he gave this, he gave his sources when it wasn't harmful to their credibility or make them in that they would be like found out, right? Like, because it's a journalist. And so that's really good information. And, there is a thing with the Eastern Catholics as well with an interview, and that's concerning. But because right now that seems like it's 2 steps ahead. And I do live in a like very populated Eastern Catholic Rite area. Like we have Maronites, Ukrainian rites, Byzantine rites, Chaldean rites, like a whole bunch of them. I think we have about 8 different Eastern rites. That is something that they would definitely like be concerned about, because most of what's in the news is usually Latin rite stuff, right? Like there's a issue with the Syro-Malabar in India. But that's very interesting because that's a case of Latinization trying to be like, it's weird because the Pope Francis seems to be trying to take the Latin out of the Syro-Malabar. And what that's causing is like a rift because the Syro-Malabar priests want to continue to face the people as opposed to facing the tabernacle, which is what their tradition is. And this is what's called Latinization. It's something that a lot of Eastern rites protect from and try to root out. And so that is currently what's happening in the Syro-Malabar is Pope Francis is actually trying to remove the Latin aspects of the Syro-Malabar rite that were adopted after Vatican II. So that's a very good thing to recognize. But again, the advisor that Anthony reports on does give, he's an advisor, he's a liturgical advisor, he's an expert in his field, and he's used as an advisor for the Vatican on the liturgy, is very concerning. And it especially when you take his statements about like all of the Catholic Church, that includes the Eastern Rite. And so there is some concern there. So we'll talk about that some other time, but Latinization should not happen within the Eastern rites. That undermines the purpose of the Eastern rites, but I'll definitely get into that. Again, I'm going to get someone who's an expert on it, more, knows more about it than I do, to be able to talk about that. But that is definitely something I plan to do. So, okay. All right. Okay. So I'll take a look at that and ask some experts that I know about, or that I know about that. So thank you for joining me this lunch, and enjoy the rest of your day. Remember, at about 9:30 tonight Eastern Standard Time, it's a little late because there's a bunch of people across the country on it. Like there's a guy from Arizona, there's a guy from Texas, so on. Our wives are going to be talking for late night levity, because we can all use some levity. So hopefully you'll see you there. And then tomorrow there's going to be a special guest, and we're going to be talking about some IPs that give the smell of heresy. And so that'll be a very interesting episode. So, all right, I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks.